Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something that's, well, a really big concern for a lot of you horse owners out there. Especially those of you who might already follow the natural approach from Headley Holistics. We're talking about metabolic issues in horses.
Yeah, it's definitely widespread. And if you're looking for that holistic path, kind of understanding the details is really important.
Exactly. And to really get into it, we're doing a deep dive into the Holistic Horse Care Guide by Tristan Carbery and Shelley Headley.
The founders of Headley Holistics.
Right. And our mission, basically, is to pull out the key stuff from their guide, specifically for listeners who are already kind of aligned with that natural way of thinking.
So you can really grasp the why behind these issues and get some practical, natural ideas to help your horses.
Totally. Because it's pretty wild when you think about it. Like 50 years ago, this stuff was apparently quite rare.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder what's changed, what's actually different now.
That's the big question, isn't it? And the guide, well, it offers a really interesting take on those changes. So maybe let's start at the beginning. What are we actually talking about when we say metabolic disorders?
Okay, good place to start. At its core, it's about how efficiently a horse's body can take food and, turn it into usable energy.
Right. And when that process gets messed up, you see these different conditions pop up. The guide helps sort of differentiate between the main ones.
Yeah, and they can look similar sometimes, but knowing the distinctions helps. So, first up, maybe insulin resistance, IR.
Okay, IR. The guide has this neat analogy. Insulin is like the gatekeeper.
Controlling where nutrients go.
Exactly. But with IR, the body's cells kind of stop listening to the gatekeepers. They don't respond properly to insulin.
So even though insulin's there, the signal isn't getting through effectively. Nutrients don't get used for energy in the muscles.
They just get stored as fat instead.
Yeah.
And this constant demand, they say it's like insulin fatigue. The cells just get worn out.
Yeah, that explains why you see those fat pads in certain spots. It's a direct result of that process going wrong. Okay, so what about PPID? People often call it Cushing's disease.
Right. The guide makes it clear. True Cushing's comes from a tumor on the pituitary gland,
which then pumps out too much ACTH hormone. That's the signal for cortisol, the stress hormone.
Exactly. But here's the tricky part. They highlight getting a reliable diagnosis.
Ah, the blood tests. Yeah. They mention ACTH levels naturally go up in the fall anyway.
And even just the stress of the vet visit and the blood draw itself can spike it temporarily.
So it makes it hard to know what's really Cushing's versus just a temporary spike.
They even talk about seeing genuine Cushing's cases with ACTH levels that are just, wow, sky high, like up to 3,000.
Whoa.
And a key visual sign they point to is that long curly coat that just doesn't shed out properly.
Yeah.
That's a big flag for true Cushing's.
Definitely a key differentiator. Okay, then there's Equine Metabolic Syndrome, or EMS. How does the guide describe that?
They position EMS as often a more general diagnosis.
Yeah.
Almost like a catch-all sometimes.
Right, when maybe it's not clearly Cushing's, but you still see problems.
Yeah. It's usually characterized by obesity, the insulin resistance we talked about, maybe shedding out late, and being more prone to laminitis.
Which brings us to laminitis itself. Painful stuff.
Very painful. The guide defines it as that inflammation and damage inside the hoof. And crucially, they link it directly back to these metabolic issues and, importantly, poor nutrition.
So those are the main conditions. But what about catching things early? What are the warning signs people should look out for?
The guide gives a really useful checklist here. Things like excess fat in specific places, that crusty neck, fatty shoulders, around the tailhead.
Sheaths and geldings, udders and mares too.
Right. Also that slow shedding we mentioned, or if the coat just doesn't finish shedding properly.
Unexplained hoof soreness or tenderness is another big one.
Definitely. And then things like maybe drinking and urinating more than usual, excessive sweating.
Yeah, or getting infections more often, seeming low on energy, losing muscle tone.
Even changes in behavior, like being grumpier or just not themselves. It's quite a range of things.
It really is. And underlying all of this, the guide keeps coming back to a core idea, doesn't it? Their main philosophy.
Absolutely. It's this fundamental belief that horses are designed to thrive on, well, natural whole food diets.
And they draw a really clear line between inappropriate diets like grains, processed feeds, synthetic supplements, and problems like inflammation and poor gut health.
Exactly. They argue that stuff disrupts the system, weakens the horse, and makes them more vulnerable to these metabolic problems. They also specifically call out synthetic nutrients.
The artificial vitamins and minerals in many feeds.
Yeah. They suggest these can mess with metabolism, hormones, gut health, even block the absorption of real nutrients. And then there's the big one, environmental toxins, especially glyphosate.
The herbicide, it's everywhere in modern farming.
Right. The guide stresses how glyphosate exposure can wreck the gut microbiome, cause dysbiosis, leaky gut interfere with hormones, weaken immunity. It really hammers home that you are what you eat idea.
Or maybe you're what your food eats or is sprayed with.
Precisely. It sets the stage for why they think these issues have exploded recently. So let's dig into commercial feeds specifically. What are their main beefs?
Well, number one is usually the high sugar and starch content, from all the grains, oats, corn, barley, wheat.
The stuff that gives horses that quick energy burst, but
causes massive spikes in blood sugar and insulin, which is exactly what you don't want in a metabolic horse.
right, that constant up and down really strains the system, leads to that insulin fatigue and just general instability. Plus, they mention it fuels low-grade inflammation.
And it's not just the sugar and starch. They're also concerned about hidden toxins in these feeds.
Yeah, this is where glyphosate comes back in. Used as a weed killer, obviously, but also as a desiccant to dry crops down before harvest.
And then there are heavy metals, potentially from contaminated soil or even sometimes in the mineral sources themselves, depending on quality.
And according to the guide, these toxins just add insult to injury. They disrupt gut bacteria, weaken the immune system, fuel inflammation.
Basically making the metabolic situation even worse. They even list specific crops they flag as often being highly contaminated.
Yeah, it's quite a list. Soy, oats, beet pulp, which is super common, wheat, corn, barley, peas, legumes like GMO alfalfa, lentils, sunflower, canola.
Wow, that covers a lot of ingredients you see on feed tags.
It really does. And their critique doesn't stop there. They also take issue with the synthetic vitamins and minerals added to feeds.
Right, the lab-made stuff. Their main point is poor absorption.
Yeah, they suggest maybe 40 to 60% just passes right through the horse without being used. So you're paying for nutrients the horse isn't actually getting much benefit from.
Not very efficient. And there's a contamination risk, too.
That's what they say. Potential contamination with heavy metals or those agricultural chemicals again. Plus, they give examples like vitamin C often coming from corn, or some B vitamins from yellow coal tar.
Coal tar! Seriously?
Apparently, it definitely makes you think twice about what's in that feed bag. And finally, they argue these synthetics can mess with the gut's pH balance,
Which can hinder nutrient absorption overall and increase the risk for things like colic or even enteroliths, those stones in the gut.
Yeah. So all in all, they paint a pretty strong picture for why they advocate moving away from conventional commercial feeds.
Okay, so if commercial feeds are out, what's the alternative? Let's talk about transitioning to their recommended whole food approach. What's step one?
Step one, and they really stress this, you absolutely have to transition gradually.
Makes sense. Can't shock the system.
Exactly. Especially moving from processed stuff to these nutrient-dense whole foods. Give the digestive system time to adapt. Prevent upset.
Okay, slow transition. And the foundation of the diet should be?
No surprise here. Good quality hay and forage. That's what horses evolved to eat. Their whole digestive tract is built for fiber.
Right. They do mention that finding good quality, clean hay can be a challenge depending on where you live.
Yeah, they encourage asking suppliers about chemical use, trying to avoid glyphosate-treated hay if possible.
Yeah.
Basically, source the best, cleanest stuff you can find.
And maybe offer a variety of hay types for a wider range of nutrients.
That's a good tip they give. They also specifically mention teff hay. It's become quite popular for metabolic horses.
But there's a catch, right?
Yeah. They say when grown correctly, teff can be great lower in sugars and starches, NSC. But if it's grown wrong, like as a cover crop, or if it's harvested too late, past the first cutting, the nutritional profile changes and it might not be suitable. They actually have more detail in their blog about teff.
Good to know. Okay, so beyond hay, what are these essential whole food ingredients they recommend? Let's start with CoolStance Copra. Coconut meal fiber.
Right. They describe this as low starch, low sugar, low NSC overall, but high in fiber and healthy fats. It gives cool, clean energy, they say.
Meaning it doesn't cause those blood sugar spikes.
Exactly. And because you usually soak it, it's great for hydration, too.
Yeah.
They see it as a much better alternative to things like beet pulp or rice bran, which they worry about contamination-wise.
And you can get it pretty easily, like from Smart Pack or Chewy.
Yeah, accessibility is good. Okay, next up, black cumin seed press cake. They sound really enthusiastic about this one.
Oh yeah, they call it a powerhouse for equine wellness. Big focus on its anti-inflammatory effects and antioxidants. They say it's fantastic for blood sugar regulation and weight optimization.
Helping both overweight and underweight horses.
Apparently so. Helping heavy horses slim down, helping thinner horses build muscle and condition. They include this really interesting case study, too.
Ah, yes, Duncan and Ranger, the two Tennessee walkers.
Rescued horses. Duncan came in overweight, crusty neck, fat pads, swollen sheath, really sensitive to fly bites, classic metabolic signs.
And Ranger was the opposite. Totally emaciated, no muscle, no fat.
Exactly. And they put both horses on the same basic whole food protocol, with black cumin seed press cake being a major part.
And the results?
Pretty dramatic. Ranger gained weight, built muscle, improved his top line. Duncan lost the excess weight, the weird fat deposits went away, his neck and sheath improved, even the fly sensitivity got way better.
Wow. That really shows how it can help normalize things, regardless of the starting point.
Yeah.
Okay, what's next? Flaxseed press cake from Evolved Remedies.
Yeah, they mentioned the specific one has a unique density. The benefits they list are mainly around gut health and insulin sensitivity, and it's a good fiber source.
How does it help the gut?
Well, when it gets wet in the digestive tract, it forms this sort of gel, which can trap and help remove things like sand or other undigested bits. And that high fiber content is great for gut motility and, importantly for metabolic horses, it helps improve how the cells respond to insulin.
Better insulin sensitivity.
Yeah.
Which is key for getting that metabolism back on track.
Absolutely. Healthy insulin function is foundational. Okay, moving on. Organic Saigon cinnamon with 4% ill. That sounds specific.
It is. Definitely not your kitchen cabinet cinnamon. They say this specific type has properties that naturally help regulate blood sugar and hormones. They even suggest it can mimic some medication benefits, but without the side effects.
Interesting. How does it affect hormones?
This is fascinating. They say it can help normalize ACTH release from the pituitary gland.
Which is what drugs like Presen are designed to do for Cushing's.
Exactly. Their point is that metabolic horses often overproduce ACTH all year round, which raises blood sugar. And high ACTH also means high cortisol, the stress hormone, creating this nasty cycle. This cinnamon, they claim, can help break that cycle.
Okay, what about milk thistle seed press cake?
This one's all about supporting the liver. Healthy liver function detoxification. The liver is crucial for blood sugar control, right? And milk thistle, specifically the silymarin in it, helps the liver detox and helps chelate or bind and remove excess iron.
And iron overload is common in metabolic horses.
Apparently so. Horses aren't great at getting rid of excess iron naturally, so milk thistle can be really helpful for liver support and keeping iron levels in check.
Makes sense. Last one on their essential list, cold water, North Atlantic Acadian kelp meal.
Yeah, they like this specific type because it's packed with nutrients, over 60 organic ones, they say. Vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and importantly, iodine.
Iodine for thyroid function and metabolism.
Right. And crucially, this Acadian kelp is apparently low in iron compared to other seaweeds, which is important given the iron overload issue we just mentioned.
Good point. So wrapping up this section, how do they contrast these whole food nutrients with the synthetic ones?
The main things are bioavailability. The body can actually recognize, absorb, and use these nutrients effectively, and the presence of beneficial phytonutrients. Those extra plant compounds in whole foods that offer added health benefits beyond just basic vitamins and minerals.
Right, stuff you don't get in an isolated synthetic vitamin pill.
Exactly. Okay, so we know the ingredients. How do we put it all together? What feeding guidelines or meal plans does the guide suggest?
Well, the basic principles are focus on fiber, add healthy fats, moderate protein, and keep sugars, starches, carbs really low. Use those whole food ingredients to keep blood sugar stable.
Makes sense. Do they give examples?
Yeah, a few. For a horse that's, say, overweight or not doing much work, they suggest mostly hay or forage, maybe some hay pellets, the Evolved Remedies Metabolic Support Protocol we talked about, and plain white salt.
Simple baseline. What if the horse is more active or needs to gain weight?
Then you'd add the CoolStance Copra to that mix. It provides those cool calories for energy and condition without messing with blood sugar.
And they mention adjusting things seasonally, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
You need to tweak the amounts of hay, pellets, CoolStance based on, weather, pasture quality, how much work the horse is doing, their body condition.
Which brings us to monitoring. They really stress keeping an eye on the horse's condition.
Constantly. You need to watch their weight, energy, overall look, and adjust the diet to keep them balanced.
And they had that simple tip for tracking, taking a weekly photo.
Yeah, a landscape photo, same spot, same time each week. It makes it easier to see subtle changes over time. And they keep saying every horse is different. No one size fits all.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk supplements more specifically. They have a whole chapter on it. Given their view on synthetics, what's their approach?
Well, they start by repeating the issues with synthetics, poor absorption, gut disruption. They believe effective supplementation for metabolic horses needs to do more than just tick vitamin mineral boxes.
What else should it do?
It should proactively help the horse handle stress, both internal and external, and support the key body systems involved. They argue whole food supplements are better because they provide those highly usable nutrients, plus all those beneficial phytonutrients.
So what are the goals of supplementation for a metabolic horse, according to the guide?
Okay, key goals are provide needed micronutrients in a form the body can use, balance out whatever the forage might be lacking, support key organs, pituitary for ACTH, liver for detox and blood sugar, thyroid, endocrine system, gut, lymphatic drainage.
Wow, quite a list.
Yeah, it's comprehensive. And doing all this in a way that's affordable and easy to feed daily.
And they recommend a specific protocol for this.
Yes, the nutritional protocol for metabolic horses using the Evolved Remedies Equine Metabolic Support Protocol. It combines several of those ingredients we already discussed.
Let's list them again.
Okay, it's the organic black cumin seed press cake, organic milk thistle seed press cake, organic flaxseed press cake, organic North Atlantic Acadian kelp meal, organic Saigon cinnamon, the 4% oil one, and the Evolved Remedies organic copper balance.
It's interesting they say they feed this to all their horses, right, as a preventative.
For overall health. And they make a point about cost, saying the whole protocol is less than $2 a day shipped, which is pretty reasonable for that quality of ingredients.
Definitely puts it in perspective. Okay, so we've covered diet supplements. Let's loop back to that big why question. Why the massive increase in metabolic issues? What's the root cause, according to Headley Holistics?
They are very clear on this. They point the finger squarely at toxins, specifically agricultural chemicals and heavy metals building up in the environment.
And they link this strongly to GMO crops and the explosion in glyphosate use.
Yes. They see these toxins as the primary driver behind not just metabolic problems, but a lot of modern equine health issues.
But they also acknowledge that avoiding these chemicals completely is basically impossible now. Glyphosate is pretty much everywhere. Heavy metals are increasing.
True, it sounds a bit bleak, but they do offer hope. They emphasize that choosing forage-based diets and being really mindful of sourcing can significantly reduce exposure.
And they talk about supporting the horse's natural detox pathways.
Right. And using specific, safe detox protocols if needed. They outline 4 essential parts to a good detox program.
What are those?
First, heal the gut, fix leaky gut, rebalance the microbiome. Second, safely get stored toxins moving out of tissues. Third, effectively bind or chelate those toxins so they can actually be removed. And fourth, remineralize, replace essential minerals that might have been lost.
So just mobilizing toxins isn't enough. You had to help the body get rid of them and then replenish.
Exactly. They warn that protocols missing any of those steps might not work or could even be harmful. And they suggest their ebook, Hidden Toxins, for anyone wanting a deep dive into their full detox approach.
Good resource. Okay, beyond diet and detox, what other management strategies do they recommend? They mention track systems or paddock paradise.
Yeah, this is about changing the horse's environment to encourage more natural movement. Instead of a big square pasture, you create a narrower track, usually around the edge.
Like a pathway loop.
Exactly. And you place hay, water, minerals, shelter at different points along the track. So the horses have to keep moving between resources all day long. Mimics how they'd move in the wild.
Clever. What are the key features?
Narrow track encourages movement, fosters natural herd behavior, helps manage weight, provides hoof stimulation from different surfaces, and it's enriching less boredom.
And the benefits, especially for metabolic horses.
Stronger hooves, better mental health, healthier socializing, smarter pasture use because they mostly stay on the track. And yeah, it definitely helps with weight control through constant low-level movement.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
They also talk about slow feeding strategies.
This is all about mimicking natural grazing, small amounts of forage, almost constantly. Not big meals twice a day.
How do you achieve that?
Using slow feeder nets or devices with small holes, choosing hay that takes longer to chew, higher NDF, feeding hay before any concentrates, having multiple hay stations to encourage moving around, just generally making forage available for longer periods.
The goal is just slow them down.
Pretty much. Better digestion, better nutrient absorption, calmer horse, lower colic risk, helps weight management, and it just fits their natural instincts better.
Okay, we've covered a ton of ground. How do they wrap it all up? What's the big picture takeaway on managing metabolic issues?
They kind of look back at the history commercial feeds started with good intentions, trying to few nutritional gaps. But now, with all the chemical use in farming, they argue those solutions might actually be part of the problem.
Wow, the solution became the problem. That's a strong take. So what are their summarized core principles?
Focus on what you feed, more than the specific diagnosis. Ditch the commercial feeds, grains, synthetics. Switch to forage-based, plus those organic whole food superfoods. Recognize toxins as a root cause, consider detox, and use things like track systems and slow feeding.
They have that checklist too, right? The key takeaway.
Yeah, the metabolic horse care checklist. Avoid commercial feeds. Transition to forage and whole foods. Understand the toxin issue. And check out the detox ebook. Consider track systems and slow feeding. It's a good summary.
And any final words of advice from the guide as we finish up?
Yeah, make changes slowly. Give at least 10-14 days for diet transitions. Maybe longer for sensitive horses. Keep monitoring progress, weight, energy, coat, hooves, attitude, and be ready to adjust.
Embrace the holistic view, basically.
Totally. They really believe natural whole foods address the root cause and lead to healthier horses. But remember, no magic bullet. Be patient, ask questions, make informed choices for your horse, and be flexible.
And they provide lots of links for more info.
Yep. Links to their main site, the toxin ebook, the metabolic support protocol, their resource library, and how to contact them for personalized help.
Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive, the message from this guide is really clear.
Yeah.
A holistic, whole food approach, focusing on natural solutions and getting to the root cause is key for managing metabolic issues, especially if you're already drawn to that Headley Holistics philosophy.
It's definitely a call to rethink conventional feeding and management, moving towards something more aligned with the horse's natural biology.
Which leads us to our final thought for you. Thinking about everything we've discussed, the huge impact of diet, environment, toxins, what's maybe one small practical change you could start making today that might have the biggest positive ripple effect on your horse's long-term metabolic health and overall well-being? Definitely check out the resources mentioned and give it some thought. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.